This is Radio TV Phono Nut, and what we have here today is the wreck of a Crosley Tombstone radio. This was one of their better models from about 1931 or so. This was on one of the online sites, and as you can tell, the cabinet's been painted probably 50 years ago, but it looked to be fairly solid in the pictures. Well, as usual, it was another one of those sellers that didn't know how to pack worth a flip, so they just basically threw the big heavy radio in a box and really didn't pack it that well, and the result was the cabinet fell apart, as you can see. Fortunately, it looks like the chassis and speaker survived. You're probably wondering, why isn't he really blowing a gasket over this? Because every other time that he's had something get destroyed in shipping, he goes crazy. Okay, well, the reason I'm not going totally crazy is because about 2 years ago I was at the Antique Alley yard sale. That's that big long yard sale that's several hundred miles long and goes across several states. And I found this empty Crosley cabinet at one of the sales. Well, for a little while I attempted to find the correct chassis and speaker for it, and by the way, I think I paid $10 for the cabinet. Well, I didn't have any luck, so I advertised the cabinet on the local Facebook baby clothes and cell phone pages and the antiques and pickers pages for the $10 I paid for it. And all I got was somebody that claimed they wanted it and never showed up to pick it up. That seems to be about the norm. You know, people claim they want this stuff and make me wait around all day on them, and then they never show up. So I just finally got disgusted and pulled the ad down. Well, this is one time I'm glad that they didn't show up to get it, because after finding this wreck, I need a nice cabinet, or a nicer cabinet, to slide this existing chassis and speaker in. And by the way, the reason I call them the Facebook baby clothes and cell phone pages is because that's basically the kind of crap that gets listed on there. I mean, you list a piece of vintage electronics on there for sale, and they act like you're supposed to give it to them if they even show any interest at all. I remember one time listing a Caliphone record player on there for $50, which was basically what I had in it, and the only response I got was some woman telling me I wanted too much money for it and that she could get them cheaper elsewhere. Now, mind you, I listed in the description what all was done to it, and I just wrote back and told her, well, you're not going to get one that's overhauled for $50, but you know, if you think you can get one elsewhere cheaper, then go for it, because it's like a fella told me one time, they know what they want for their junk, and I know what I want for mine. That one I ended up pulling the ad down and giving it to a friend of mine who has Parkinson's disease. He needed something to play his 45s on, and I'd a whole lot rather give it to somebody that really appreciates it and needs it, instead of just some idiot that just wants to get something for nothing. But you can bet she didn't quibble over that $600 or $900 that smartphone cost that she was carrying around. Speaking of shipping and poor packing, this just came in. It's supposed to be a portable record player, and based on the size of the box, I'd say they just jammed it in the box with little to no packing material. While we're on a roll today, let's open it up and find out. And yeah, that's pretty much exactly what they did. This little amount of crap ain't even enough to offer any kind of protection. So let's see how bad this thing's destroyed. I bet they didn't tie the tone arm down either. Oh wow, they actually did. I can't believe it. And they actually put a gracious amount of newspaper inside the playing compartment. I can't believe it. This is a True Tone portable record player, and it's kind of beat up, but the only reason I got it is because A, it was very cheap, and B, it's obvious this thing was built by RCA. I really wasn't aware that RCA was building stuff for the department stores back in the late 50s, but they certainly built this thing, but we'll get to that later. Okay, back to the business at hand. We won't have time to do any kind of repair work in this video, but I would at least like to remove the chassis from this busted up cabinet and kind of give it a look, and then slide it into this better cabinet and throw the remains of this cabinet in the trash. Here's the speaker, and by the way, it's a Magnavox branded speaker. Now, cone is not torn, but it's stuck, so that will need attention. Here's the chassis. This is a 9-tube standard broadcast band chassis. Even has a tuning meter here, so yeah, this was high performance for the early 1930s. And I will say to anyone that's going to be shipping a big heavy radio like this, the safest way to do it is dismount the speaker, because the heavy weight of the speaker can pull the front clean out of the radio, because that front is not as heavy as you think it is, and after 60 or 70 or 80 years it's even more deteriorated. So you really need to pull the speaker out, wrap it up in cardboard so it doesn't get damaged, box it separately if you have to, and then double box the rest of it, box the chassis and cabinet in a box and put plenty of padding around it, and put that box inside of another box and put plenty of padding around that. Just don't throw it in a box like this goofball seller did, and then because you'll have this result if you do. And look at this nice 4-gang tuning capacitor. This is a super het, by the way. Chassis is kind of dingy and dirty and a little rusty, but I think this is worthy of a full restoration one of these days. There it is. Now all I have to do is locate some bolts to hold the chassis to the cabinet, because those were missing from the old set. They were probably there before it was shipped. They probably just worked their way loose and fell out of the old ragged box that this was in. And for those of you who are too young to know, this is an example of a real Crosley radio while Powell Crosley Jr. was running things. This is not to be confused with the current Crosley brand of Chinese garbage that ought to be thrown in a dumpster. In fact, the only relationship the current Crosley and the old Crosley has is the name, and that's as far as it goes. This radio here is so much better quality than the newer Crosley junk that it's not even funny. And here we are with the chassis switcheroo complete. Of course, those knobs need to be stripped and repainted from where they were originally painted on the other radio. And here's what's left of the old cabinet that's now been EOL'd. I'll save the escutcheon off of here in case it's needed on a future project, but as far as I'm concerned, this cabinet is ready for the garbage heap, and one day we'll properly restore this one and clean it up.